Our next item is an update on the Newtown-Yardley Road and Tara Drive crosswalk. Our office, between the last meeting and this meeting, has performed some field analysis, including site distance measurements as well as speed data collection for that intersection. We've provided a technical memorandum to the board with some of that information and some possible, recommendations. So Rich and I are here tonight to answer any questions that the board may have.
Do you have some bullet points that you can, some highlights of the study that you could give us?
Yeah, sure. So what we did was we collected a radar study at the intersection of at Tara Boulevard. Typically, what we're looking for is the speeds in the eastbound and westbound directions to take a look at what the 85th percentile would be. That would provide justification for any type of change to the speed limit along Newtown-Yardley Road. The radar study was out from Thursday, November 17th until Tuesday, November 22nd. Roughly counted close to 25,000 vehicles along that stretch. The 85th percentile speed was roughly running at approximately 39 miles an hour. Eastbound direction was running about 40 miles an hour, with the westbound direction running about 38 miles an hour. So typically with a change in the speed limit, what PennDOT suggests is what they like to look at is the 85th percentile speed, and they try and have that 85th percentile speed fall within 5 miles an hour of the posted speed limit, and right now it's posted at 35 miles an hour. We also conducted site distance analysis. Looking left, we approximated about 440 feet looking left, about 500 feet looking right, which is sufficient for the required 319 feet. We also looked at crash history along that stretch as well. There was 2 notable accidents in the last 5 years. So based upon the radar study, the site distance and the crash data, the data that we got at that time did not warrant a reduction in the speed limit.
Do you have any other measures that you would suggest? Any countermeasures?
Yes. So PennDOT does have suggestions for countermeasures. I know most recently there are high visibility crosswalks that were put out there. There were upgraded signage. There was delineation as well for a pedestrian refuge. We could also look at any flashing devices such as RFBs. What they are it's yellow strobe lights that would be activated by pedestrian push buttons. We could take a look at that. There's also raised crosswalks, but that does present limitations, drainage limitations, snowplow limitations, noise, which isn't really applicable, or it wouldn't necessarily be needed in this residential area. There's also LED lights that can be attached to the signs themselves. Typically they would have solar, and the good thing about those is that they would be going 24/7. So anything that would help provide more visibility to the crosswalk and make it safer.
I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
And then we can leave it over to the board questions, and we'll open it up to the public. So even though we don't see a path towards, at this time, it is kind of like a preliminary study.
That's correct.
Even if we don't see a path towards reducing the speed limit at this time, so you did leave open the opportunity to have these countermeasures, to have signalizing the crosswalk. So
Yes.
there are opportunities there. Is there anything we can do to get PennDOT approval, either for speed limits or for, even though it's not warranted, or doesn't seem to be warranted, or get PennDOT approval for signalizing? How can we push that along?
Sure, we can go back and take a look at contacting PennDOT with regards to approval for any flashing device, whether that be the RFBs or the backlit signs. These speeds, the lowering of the speed limit would also require PennDOT approval, but at this time, the data that we collected did not suggest lowering the speed limit.
With that, it seems like it doesn't qualify for reducing the speed limit. There were geometric measures or geometric studies that were done.
Correct. Yeah, we also took a look at the sight distance as well. So based upon the sight distance, 39 miles an hour, which we looked at, that required 319 feet of sight distance. And we had over 440 in either direction.
That's what I thought I remembered, yeah. And so that's a factor of how much there's a hill or a curve or anything like that.
Correct, yeah. So the sight distance is roughly taken at 3.5 feet off the roadway.
Okay. This is a township road, is that correct?
Yes.
It is a township road. If it's a township road, and I know you have an answer to this. If it's a township road, why do we need PennDOT to approve?
So PennDOT has jurisdiction over all flashing devices and signalizations within the state.
So it's because of the flashing signalized.
Correct.
Okay. And maybe this is a question for a solicitor or a manager. What would happen if we attempted to do an unapproved modification, whether it be a signalized crosswalk or a speed limit reduction? I'm imagining we could get into trouble for that.
Yeah, it's not authorized by law to revise a speed limit unless it is accompanied by an engineering and traffic investigation that supports it. That's in the vehicle code. That would be a violation of the vehicle code. And with regard to signage, again, you can't just go out and put up signs. You need PennDOT approval. You may be able to get it, but you can't do it without PennDOT approval. It also becomes an insurance issue. If the township gets sued, our liability insurance carrier will not defend the township, and any damages would have to come out of the general fund.
But it is very reasonable to think that if we put in a signalized crosswalk, put in some signalization there, that PennDOT would approve it.
I think that's reasonable. Yes, we can go through the measures if the board would like to go that route.
Okay.
Do we need a motion for that? Because I think that needs to happen.
Okay. I don't know if can we do it. Can we do a motion on? Can we take action on that?
Well, there's a couple of options to the RFBs, the RRFBs. You showed us images of standalone RFBs, whatever they're called. But in North Sycamore Street, you recommended overhead. And this is what the residents, I think, were asking for. So you have a question of whether the standalone RFBs are adequate for the situation, or does it require maybe a overhead? I, for one, would prefer the overhead because, number one, we are doing it at North Sycamore Street, and why wouldn't we do it here? And number two, there's some overhead signage or flashing light on the other entrance to this development. I don't know if you're aware of that. So my feeling is what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and especially on Newtown-Yardley Road, which is a lot more traffic than on Lower Darlington. And I know you have the sight distance and so on, but you know, from my personal experience there, drivers need more visibility, and some of these signs may not be as visible as something overhead. And you did mention LED lighting, which is interesting too. that could be on as part of that overhead, I imagine. But anyway, before we get into making a resolution to do something specific, we need to consider which is the best option, I think.
Is there other data collection that could be, I'll come back to you, Kyle. Is there other data collection that needs to be done or can be done?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly, I was talking to Leanna about this earlier, if need be, I mean, we could certainly put a video camera up and view real time to see how long does it take a pedestrian to cross the street, how many cars don't adhere to the pedestrians crossing the street. I mean, we can take a look at that in-house, something that's not measured by just the standard, radar study or sight distance issues.
I ask that because I'm wondering if we need more data collection as well as maybe giving us some options around signalization and with costs.
Okay.
I don't think I need more data. I think I'm in favor of an overhead, or if I may.
I have a number of questions before we get to deciding all of that. If you allow me to ask some of my questions,
yes, please.
Because I'm trying to understand the data.
Yes, please.
And I know you're taking some kind of an average here, and I know that the crosswalk may be more busy at different times of the day. And I haven't seen numbers like during the rush hours, in the morning and the evening, and lots of residents have called into question the visibility with the sunrise. It's directly in front of your eyes in that location and so on. So is there a database, for example, where you can carve out what the speed limits, the 85 percentile, I'm not quite sure what the heck that means. I guess that means this is the average speed of 85% of the cars. Does that mean 15% are going over that speed? I'm not quite sure.
That's correct, yes.
So there could be 15% of the cars going over that speed, and one of the directions you mentioned, the average was 40.3 going eastbound.
Correct.
So that's over 5 miles per hour difference with the speed limit. And I think in this situation, taking the average of eastbound, westbound is really not appropriate, because a car coming eastbound can kill you just as well as a car coming westbound. So I think it's an important number that you found, that over in eastbound traffic, it's going over the 5-mile limit. And according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, if a car is going 40 miles, if somebody's hit by a car going 40 miles per hour, 80% of those people will die. If the car is going 30 miles per hour, that gets cut down to 40%. If it's 20 miles per hour, it gets down to 10%. So there's a significant difference even in that 5 or 10 miles per hour. Now, I'm not saying that lowering the speed limit is going to cause people to actually drive slower. I hope it does. But, it's a warning to them that they could be ticketed, at least, for going over the speed limit. So that's a couple of questions. I also, you got the crash history. Is this crashes that are reported to the police?
Correct.
So there could be some close calls, and we've heard about that from residents that are not really reported. We don't have any idea how many close calls there might be. I was out there myself, and I think one of the residents mentioned how I was crossing the crosswalk, and one car stopped and another car almost hit that car from behind. I mean, so these are almost things that you can't measure, obviously.
Correct.
But, I would like to know in the particular times of the day, whether there's a variation in your averages, so we can determine what's, I don't know what's the most important time of the day, but if you average it out, averages can not give you a completely full picture.
That's correct, yeah. So the data was taken, and there are numbers per hour, per day. So I could break that down any way that would need be.
Well, I'm not an expert on how you would do that, but I would just be interested in the rush hours during the week. I don't know if there's more traffic there during Saturdays because you did it on Saturday, Sunday.
So typically traffic may drive a little bit faster when there's less congestion, which would be off-peak.
Which would be Saturday and Sunday?
Correct.
Even people going to church? Okay. All right, well, those are basically kind of the questions and things I would like to see.
Sure.
And, especially the overhead blinking, whatever you called it again, beacon. And if it can be lighted up with an LED, that's even an extra as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have a comment. I live on the side of Dolington Road, so I see that flashing light on the other road, as I said, Dolington Road, and it's completely ineffective. I'm sorry to say. So I think that along with the flashing light, there has to be other mitigation, because I'm just worried that just that overhead flashing light, it just, people, you see it when it's put up there, and then people forget about it. Like I said, nobody adheres to the speed limit on the other side, so why is that gonna change on, at Tara Boulevard? I just have my doubts about that. I like the idea of a pedestrian initiated light. I think that's a great idea. If it's big enough that people will actually pay attention to it, if it's, I'm not sure, I saw the little samples of what it looked like, I'm not sure if that's enough. It's, they're small, aren't they?
The lights themselves?
The pedestrian initiated.
Yeah, the LEDs are smaller, correct. Yes, the border lit signs, that's correct.
But they're called beacons. Why are they called beacons and not just lights?
The beacons, I believe, are located on the other side of that lower Dolington Road.
I don't think those are beacons. Those are just a flashing yellow light.
That's what they're called. That's correct.
That's what they're called?
Yes.
I thought a beacon was like smashing into your face.
No,
light.
no, the RFBs would be more like a strobe light. The RFBs are more effective than the yellow beacons.
Yeah.
And the RFBs is what some of us were thinking about.
That's correct.
I like the strobes, that's the one I was referring to.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's the RFBs, that's correct.
I know it sounds like we have some preferences here, but I want to.
Mr. Chair, can I ask you a question?
Please. Oh, yes, please.
In regards to the speed limit, would this be considered a residential area because there are houses that front onto the roadway?
I believe it's zoned residential, that's correct.
Okay. And you're the traffic engineer, not me, but I always thought that in a residential area, the speed limit could be as low as 25 miles an hour.
I believe that's what it is coming out of the borough, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we continue that into the township? Is the township 35 miles an hour? I think it increases as we go down towards the bypass. Could this board pass some sort of resolution stating that we would like to change the speed limit on that road to coordinate with the borough speed limit of 25 miles an hour?
I believe you would, if that's the justification, we can certainly take a look at that.
Well, because you're talking about PennDOT,
Correct.
supersedes everything, but
They-
PennDOT had to pass the ruling for the borough to get 25 miles an hour. It's the same road, just a little bit of an extension, and it does have residential properties that face onto the roadway. So why would it be so hard to have PennDOT agree that this could be a continuum of the 25 mile an hour speed limit?
Not only that, sorry for the feedback, but this is access to the Newtown Trail, which is on the other side where the cemetery is. I mean, that's not a residential area, but You need to go across this crosswalk to go to continue on the trail, and that leads into the borough. And I believe, according to our comprehensive plan, trails are very important to Newtown Township. And a lot of people want to go into the borough because of the shopping and so on. And I've heard that the borough is having a difficult time because businesses in the borough are not doing so well. So we want to encourage more pedestrians to walk into the borough. We want to encourage them to shop in Newtown Township as well. That's why we want to do that bridge, maybe. So, you know, I think it's a good idea if we can possibly get the 25 miles per hour continued from the borough.
Just to continue on, I believe a few years ago, the township, the Board of Supervisors were given a list of different streets within the township of which we had agreed to lower the speed limit from 35 to 25. And I don't know, that didn't seem to be an issue and PennDOT approval or anything like that, because maybe they are township roads. Now, again, I just think that the continuation of the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit should be understandable in regards to PennDOT agreeing to this, because we're not really changing the whole roadway. We're just being uniformed as to what it's doing through the borough. And I just feel that maybe PennDOT should be notified and presented with this scenario.
One more thing, something I noticed. So when you come out of the borough, the last 25-mile-an-hour sign is on the right, coming towards Newtown Walk. Then, about 100 yards later, there's a 35-mile-an-hour sign. So it happens in a very short period of time. And then, right at Newtown Walk, there's another 35-mile-an-hour sign. So just removing that middle 35-mile-an-hour sign, I know we can't do that with without PennDOT approval. I mean, that would take care of the whole thing. So, I mean, it would be implicit then that it's 25 till after Newtown Walk. So I know that's, I know. I was told that I can't go out there and take that sign out of the ground, but just
Be ashamed of something that happened to it.
yeah. I measured. I actually, yeah. I know. Yeah. Gotcha.
Anyone else?
Can we just instruct them to apply for a lower speed limit and the flashing beacons? I mean, we just keep talking about it.
I would go along with that, and we could do that motion, but do you want to hear from the public as well?
Sure.